They scoff at Thalia Vos, too small, too quiet, too new. Colonel Harrison Westlake waves her off like background noise. She just nods. Silent. Still. But stick around. That patch on her sleeve, not decorative. It marks a unit so covert it doesn't officially exist. They thought she was just a pretty prop. What they didn't know, she trained the ghosts who cleared his messes. Now Westlake's name is on the report, under compromised. And Thalia, she's the one writing it. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and what time you found this video. Don't miss out on future content by subscribing. Now, Harrison Westlake's perfectly pressed suit felt like armor as he strode through the marble corridors of the federal courthouse. The obsidian paperweight, a gift from Meridian's CEO, marking his 100th successful defense, sat heavy in his briefcase, its weight a reminder of 2 decades spent protecting corporate interests at any cost. The courtroom doors parted before him like a sea of expectations. Another day, another military whistleblower thinking they could challenge Meridian defense. Harrison allowed himself a small smile as he arranged his files with mechanical precision, the morning light catching his gold cufflinks, each one worth more than most soldiers' monthly salary. All rise for the Honorable Judge Monroe. The routine felt comfortable, predictable, until she walked in. Commander Thalia Vos moved with the rigid posture of someone who'd spent their life in uniform, but it was her eyes that made Harrison's pen click once, twice, 3 times, a tell he thought he'd eliminated years ago. They held none of the uncertainty he was used to seeing in witnesses. Instead, they burned with something far more dangerous certainty. Your Honor, before we begin. Harrison rose his voice, carrying that smooth confidence that had become his trademark. But Commander Vos was already shrugging off her formal military jacket, revealing what should have been impossible. The Shadow Echo insignia, its metallic threads catching the light. The gallery erupted in whispers. Harrison's fingers found the obsidian paperweight, clutching it like an anchor. His mind raced through decades of carefully constructed barriers, wondering which one had cracked. Those records were supposed to be buried so deep even God couldn't find them. The defense moves to dismiss on grounds of national security, Harrison announced, but the words felt hollow even to him. In the gallery, someone's phone camera clicked, the sound like a gunshot in his ears. Meridian Truth would be trending within hours. Commander Vos stood her voice, cutting through his practiced defenses. Mr. Westlake, for 20 years you've hidden behind national security. Today we're going to talk about what that security cost in civilian lives. The obsidian paperweight slipped slightly in Harrison's sweating palm. Throughout his career he'd cultivated an image of implacable authority, but something in her tone made his next breath catch. In his mind he heard the screams from the Kazara footage he'd helped bury, the ones that sometimes echoed in his dreams. Drop 1 in the comments if you've ever faced someone who thought they were untouchable. Looking at Commander Vos, Harrison remembered his mentor's words from his first year at Meridian. Power isn't about being right, Harrison. It's about making sure no one can prove you wrong. For the first time in 20 years, he wondered if that philosophy had led him down a path from which there was no return. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder, but Harrison barely heard it. His focus remained locked on the Shadow Echo insignia, a ghost from the past that shouldn't exist. As Commander Vos took her seat, their eyes met across the courtroom, and in that moment, Harrison Westlake felt something he hadn't experienced since his first case out. The obsidian paperweight felt colder, now its surface no longer reflecting triumph, but something darker. Something that whispered of buried truths and coming storms. Will Harrison Westlake's carefully constructed world survive the truth Commander Vos is about to unveil? The answer might shatter more than just his defense. Harrison Westlake's leather chair creaks as he leans back, the weight of 30 years of legal victories suddenly feeling like chains around his neck. The obsidian paperweight, A gift from Meridian's CEO after the Shanghai settlement catches the midnight office light, its surface no longer reflecting triumph, but accusation. His secure phone buzzes again, the board's panic seeping through each message like poison. Harrison, the board needs answers now. Shadow Echo can't surface. Handle it. The texts blur together as he scrolls, his usual steady hands betraying him with subtle tremors. The classified files spread before him tell a story he's spent years burying. Operation Shadow Echo 37. Civilian casualties, 5 operators lost. Clinical terms masking the horror of what really happened. Harrison runs his fingers over the redacted sections, remembering how meticulously he'd crafted them, how carefully he'd woven a web of classification and legal barriers so thick no one would ever see the truth. But Commander Thalia Vos had seen through it all. His mind drifts to that meeting 6 years ago in a Pentagon conference room that smelled of coffee and power. "It's a necessary evil," General Matthews had said, sliding the first Shadow Echo briefing across the polished table. "Meridian defense protects American interests. Collateral damage is unfortunate but unavoidable." Harrison had believed it then. Or perhaps he'd just wanted to believe it, wanted to justify the 7-figure salary and corner office that came with being Meridian's attack dog. The scientific studies on institutional corruption flash through his mind, research he'd once used to build better defenses against whistleblowers. The Stanford prison experiment, the Milgram studies, all showing how power corrupts, how systems protect themselves. He'd weaponized that knowledge, used it to predict and crush threats to Meridian's empire. "Have you ever wondered if we're the bad guys?" Sarah, his former deputy, had asked before resigning last year. He'd dismissed her as weak then. Now her words haunt him like ghosts in his empty office. The obsidian paperweight feels heavier as he lifts it, studying his distorted reflection in its surface. A familiar ritual that once brought comfort now fills him with unease. In its dark surface, he sees not the distinguished legal counsel, but something else. Something that makes his stomach turn. His phone buzzes again. A news alert. Meridian Defense faces congressional inquiry. Fourth, Meridian files trends worldwide. The hashtag he'd dismissed this morning has exploded, each tweet carrying fragments of truth they'd fought so hard to bury. Harrison opens his secure laptop, accessing the shadow servers where the real records live. 37 faces stare back at him from classified personnel files. Civilians who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. He'd never looked at their faces before, had reduced them to numbers in redacted documents. Type "truth rises" if you believe no secret stays buried forever. The viral tweets challenge spreading faster than his team of digital cleanup specialists can contain. The office feels different at midnight. Each echo of his footsteps seems to whisper accusations. The empty desks of his legal team, once a symbol of his authority to send them home while he worked late, now feel like abandoned ships deserting a sinking vessel. More messages flash across his phone. Board members distancing themselves, longtime allies suddenly unavailable. The same pattern he's orchestrated against whistleblowers dozens of times is now turning against him. Harrison reaches for the bourbon in his bottom drawer, top shelf like everything in his world, but his hand freezes midway. In the window's reflection, he catches sight of himself, the $5,000 suit, the carefully maintained silver hair, the trappings of power he's accumulated. All of it built on foundations he's starting to question. The weight of the obsidian paperweight in his hand suddenly becomes unbearable. He sets it down, watching it catch the light like a black hole on his desk. The same desk where he'd signed off on Shadow Echo's cover-up, where he'd rationalized every decision as necessary for national security. Commander Voss's words from the courtroom echo in his head. The truth doesn't die. It waits. For the first time in his career, Harrison Westlake feels something he's never allowed himself to feel before: doubt. The night stretches ahead of him, filled with more desperate calls, more trending hashtags, more cracks appearing in the fortress he's built. But as he stares at the obsidian paperweight, Harrison Westlake realizes that perhaps the greatest threat to everything he's built isn't Commander Vos or the Tonsor Meridian files. Perhaps it's the truth he's been hiding from himself. Harrison Westlake stares at the obsidian paperweight on his mahogany desk, watching sunlight fracture across its polished surface. The same paperweight he'd smugly tapped during countless depositions, dismissing grieving families with practiced indifference. Now it feels heavier than a coffin lid. His phone buzzes again, the 47th notification in the past hour. Another Shadow Echo survivor has come forward. Their story matches Commander Vos's testimony perfectly. The burning lungs, the skin lesions, the miscarriages. Evidence he'd personally buried now claws its way to the surface like vengeful corpses. Mr. Westlake. His assistant's voice trembles through the intercom. CNN is running another special. They're calling it the Shadow Echo Massacre. Harrison Westlake's manicured fingers drum against his desk, a nervous tick he'd mocked in witnesses. The trending hashtag #WestlakeLies burns in his peripheral vision every time he glances at his phone. His carefully constructed wall of legal precedents and confidentiality agreements crumbles with each new testimony. The footage of Commander Vos coughing blood during her cross-examination plays on repeat across every network. Harrison Westlake had smiled, then suggesting her illness was psychosomatic. Now that smile haunts him as medical records confirm the chemical exposure he'd denied for years. The board expects this handled Harrison. The CEO's voicemail loops in his mind. The implied meaning is clear. Silence Vos permanently. The same solution they'd used before. His fingers hover over the phone muscle memory, ready to make the call that would end this threat. But Commander Vos's words echo. Look in my eyes while you deny my soldiers died screaming. Harrison Westlake catches his reflection in the window, hollow-eyed, gray-faced. When did he become this creature who trades lives for profit margins? The obsidian paperweight feels slick in his palm as Reuters breaks another story. Shadow Echo Meridian Defense new chemical weapons were deployed. His phone explodes with messages from other survivors' lawyers, sharks scenting blood in the water. Sir, his assistant again. The VA Oversight Committee is demanding all our files, and Commander Vos's condition has worsened. She's been moved to intensive care. Harrison Westlake's hand trembles as he reaches for his Scotch decanter. The amber liquid sloshes over million-dollar carpeting as distant sirens wail. Federal agents, perhaps. Or just the sound of his conscience finally breaking through. The obsidian paperweight slips from his grip, shattering on impact, like the pieces of his carefully constructed lies scattered beyond repair. His empire of denials and legal shields dissolves in the acid truth of Commander Vos's testimony. Type truth breaks. If you've ever watched someone's carefully constructed lies shatter, the board meeting notification flashes on his screen. They'll expect him to authorize the final solution. Harrison Westlake straightens his tie muscle memory from 1,000 courtroom battles, but his reflection shows something new in his eyes. Fear. Not of legal consequences or public shame, but of the monster he's become. His phone buzzes one final time. A message from his old law professor. The truth costs less than lies in the end, Harrison. It's time to choose. The obsidian shards glitter like black stars across his carpet as Harrison Westlake faces the consequences of his choices, knowing that every death, every covered-up tragedy leads back to his signature on countless denials. The monster in the window stares back, and for the first time he recognizes it as himself. Commander Thalia Vos shatters my world with each word from General Riker's mouth. I, Harrison Westlake, watch helplessly as 30 years of carefully constructed legal barriers crumble under the weight of his testimony. My fingers trace the smooth surface of the obsidian paperweight on my desk, a gift from the Meridian Defense Board when I became lead counsel. It once represented unassailable power. Now it burns cold in my palm. The livestream counter hits 1 million viewers. Justice for Shadow Echo floods my screen each refresh, bringing thousands more tweets. Civilian casualties, illegal operations, cover-ups. The words I've spent decades burying under mountains of classified documents and legal jargon now scroll endlessly across social media. Mr. Westlake, your team's response? Judge Monroe's voice cuts through my spiral. The gallery's silence weighs heavy as lead. I stand straightening my tie, a ritual that once centered me. Your Honor, I request a brief recess to confer with my clients. My voice doesn't shake. Years of courtroom battles have taught me to mask terror with composure. The judge grants 15 minutes. I barely make it to my office before the facade cracks. The obsidian paperweight becomes a projectile exploding against the wall with a sound like distant gunfire. Like Khazara. The irony doesn't escape me. The very operations I helped hide are now haunting these halls. My phone buzzes. A message from the board. Destroy her credibility, whatever it takes. Authorization granted for full measures. Translation: bury Commander Vos so deep she'll never surface again. I've done it before. I know exactly which strings to pull, which evidence to manufacture. Instead, I find myself accessing the secure server. My security clearance, earned through decades of loyal service, opens files that could burn Meridian Defense to the ground. My hands move with surgical precision, copying documents, transfer records, operation logs. Each file is another nail in my own coffin. The office door opens. Sir, they're reconvening. My assistant announces, then pauses. Are you copying files? I don't look up. Sometimes, Angela, the only victory lies in complete surrender. The words taste like ash, but they're the truest I've spoken in 30 years. Sir, that's treason against the company. No, Angela. What's treason is watching children die in Khazara and burying the evidence under legal terminology. I initiate the final transfer. What's treason is helping powerful men sleep at night while families search endless graves for their loved ones. The courtroom falls silent as I return briefcase heavy with truth instead of lies. Commander Vos watches me with steel in her eyes, the same steel I saw in the surveillance footage from Khazara as she tried to stop the operation that started this all. Your Honor. I begin, my voice steady, despite the tremor in my hands. I wish to enter new evidence into the record, evidence that will corroborate General Riker's testimony and... I pause 30 years of corporate loyalty warring with the weight of countless lives, and prove beyond doubt that Meridian Defense knowingly conducted illegal operations resulting in civilian casualties. The gallery erupts. Commander Voss's eyes widen. The judge's gavel cracks like gunfire, but it can't silence the storm I've unleashed. My phone explodes with messages from the board. Threats, promises, desperate attempts to rein me in. I place my obsidian paperweight, now reassembled, each crack a testament to this moment, on the evidence table. The defense rests, Your Honor, but the truth is just beginning to speak. Drop 2 if you believe one person's courage can change everything. Type truth wins if you're ready for justice. Front kontor had justice on Shadow Echo. The headlines will call this a historic corporate downfall. But here in this moment, it feels more like resurrection. Sometimes victory wears the face of absolute defeat. And sometimes the greatest stand we can take is to finally completely surrender to the truth. Harrison Westlake stares at his trembling hands, the same hands that once arranged the deaths of whistleblowers with casual signature strokes. The federal courthouse's marble halls, once his arena of triumph, now feel like a tomb. Every footstep echoes with the weight of consequence, every whisper carries judgment. The obsidian paperweight, his proud trophy of 20 years at Meridian Defense, lies shattered on Judge Monroe's bench. Each gleaming black shard reflects a different fragment of his crumbling empire. The USB drive beside it pulses with an almost sinister blue light containing every dark secret he'd buried beneath legal jargon and national security claims. The truth, Mr. Westlake. Judge Monroe's voice cuts through the hushed courtroom. We're waiting. Harrison Westlake rises slowly, his expensive suit now feeling like a costume. Commander Thalia Vos's wheelchair is positioned directly in his line of sight, a deliberate choice he knows. Her eyes, sharp despite her injuries, pin him like a specimen under glass. Meridian Defense, his voice cracks, then steadies systematically eliminated threats to its profit margins through what we euphemistically called aggressive risk management. Civilian casualties were logged as operational necessities. Whistleblowers were, he swallows hard, neutralized. The courtroom's collective intake of breath sounds like a wind tunnel. Phones rise like a forest of gleaming rectangles live-streaming his confession. Westlake truth trends within minutes. The Vos protocols weren't just about military efficiency. He continues each word feeling like glass in his throat. They were about control, absolute control, and when Commander Vos threatened that control, his eyes meet hers. I authorized the strike that put her in that wheelchair. Gasps ripple through the gallery. The judge's gavel cracks like thunder restoring order. On the screens around the courtroom, the hashtag evolves. Westlake Crimes. The Eclipse Committee wasn't about oversight. Harrison Westlake's voice grows stronger with each revelation, as if the truth itself is burning away his fear. It was about power, the power to decide who lived and who died, all hidden behind classified stamps and national security directives. He reaches into his pocket, withdraws his Meridian Defense Executive Badge, his last symbol of authority. The gold surface, once gleaming, now seems tarnished by invisible blood. He places it beside the shattered obsidian and the USB drive. I created a machine that turned death into profit. His voice breaks. And I convinced myself it was necessary, patriotic even. But standing here now, looking at the damage, at Commander Vos, I realize I became the very thing I once swore to fight against. The silence in the courtroom feels absolute. Commander Vos wheels forward slightly, her military medals catching the light. The truth sounds different when you finally speak it. Harrison Westlake says, addressing not just the court, but the cameras, the world beyond. It sounds like chains breaking, like dawn breaking, like hope. Judge Monroe leans forward. And the consequences, Mr. Westlake. I accept them all. He responds, standing straighter. The Vos protocols will be my penance, not as they were, but as they should be, guidelines for corporate accountability in military contracts. The Eclipse Committee's files will expose every corrupt deal, every covered-up death. Let my fall serve as a warning. No profit margin is worth a human life. As federal marshals approach with handcuffs, Harrison Westlake has one final moment of clarity. His empire of lies built over decades crumbles in minutes of truth. The handcuffs click shut, a sound that will haunt corporate boardrooms for years to come. Share this testimony, he says to the cameras. Not for me, but for every victim of corporate greed. Let my confession be the first domino in a chain of accountability. Commander Vos watches as they lead him away, her eyes holding not triumph, but something more profound, recognition of the cost of truth, the price of justice, the weight of transformation. The shattered obsidian paperweight remains on the judge's bench, its broken pieces catching the light like tears, like stars, like the first rays of a new dawn. Harrison. Type "Truth Wins" if you believe in corporate accountability. Share this video to show that no one is above justice. Westlake Truth.